Avengers Infinity War. I watched this movie an entire week ago now, because I watched it on the opening weekend on Friday, and the moment that I walked out of the theater, I thought to myself that that was one of the best experiences I had had with films in my entire life. I was so happy with how they pulled this off, and I didn't know how to properly talk about this film without spoiling anything. So this will be a non-spoiler filled review, and I might do one that's spoiler filled in the future because there are so many things that I would love to talk about this film that everybody else has. And I like, basically as soon as this movie was done, I thought about it the entire weekend, and all I was doing was looking up things. And during this week at the same time, that's all I was thinking about. So I still needed to feel and process everything that I had seen because there's so much about this film that went down. And I don't want to talk about anything that you hadn't seen in the trailers. And even then, I'm not really going to talk too much about that. But this movie is really about Thanos and his motivations and his quest to get the gauntlet filled up with the Infinity Stones, all 6 of them. And the Avengers having to stop him from accomplishing this quest. Now, we really hadn't seen too much of Thanos before in the MCU. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they kind of hinted at him every once in a while. The biggest hint was at the end of Avengers, we saw him talking to, I don't remember who exactly it was, but talking about how they had failed, and then they showed Thanos' face. So that's been a 6-year build, and I think that deep down, ever since Iron Man 10 years ago, we all wanted this to happen. So the problem with that is that they never built him up at all. And I really think that they could have had him in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 or Thor Ragnarok actually have a showdown with some superhero and show how much of a threat Thanos is. Not necessarily his motivations, because I felt that this movie did an excellent job explaining what kind of a character he was, but I just wanted the seriousness and the threat level and powerfulness of Thanos to have been shown earlier. Now, considering that they didn't do that, they did a phenomenal job of doing that in this film. His motivations were crystal clear and they made sense. This is one of the best realized villains, not only in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because that's pretty easy to do. There's only a handful of them that were actually good. But he is one of the best villains of all time. He's in my top 5. He might be in my top 3. And after future viewings, he might be my favorite villain of all time. I don't want to go there just yet because I want to see this movie in a year's time. I'm going to see it a few times before that, but I want to see how it holds up with time. But Thanos is amazing. Amazing. Josh Brolin did a fantastic job portraying him. And also, I have to admit that the CGI for his character seemed almost real. It didn't seem like it was CGI anymore. I even felt that when we first saw the trailers for it, a while ago, that I was like, yeah, it looks pretty good. But when you're seeing it on the screen, and he's talking or battling, it felt like it was real. That's how crazy it was. The rest of the CGI in this film is really, really good. What's his group called? I forget what his group is called. The Black Order, I think. I could be wrong. But anyway, his minions, essentially. There was one of the female characters that I felt that they could have just had like a regular woman play instead of actually doing it CGI, because she's not overly tall or overly big or anything like that. I guess maybe it would have been too hard because I think she has horns. So maybe the horns, if she's doing big crazy moves, I can understand that would be kind of hard to film. So they went CG with her, but see, she felt she was fake. Everything else in the film looked really good, but she looked fake, which was weird. But Thanos looked real. The rest of the Black Order, I felt that they were kind of just there. They did a good job of kind of making them very powerful, but there was only really the Wizard, and I forget what his name is, but the Wizard I felt was an actual threat. And I loved the way that he would explain things and talk about things. It just made it so much more enjoyable to watch, and he had more of a presence than like a minion would normally. I felt that he had some more character than some of the villains that we've had before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You understood where he was coming from, and you saw how powerful he was. So I really enjoyed that. I wish that still the Black Order would have been a little bit more powerful, but that's just my own personal opinion. And they did not nerf Thanos in the least. He was extremely powerful, exactly what he needed to be. Now, one of the few negatives that I will say about this specific movie, and there's not a lot, there really isn't, but not all characters are in here. Almost everybody is, but I really wish that everybody would have been included. They're only missing like a very small handful. I won't say who, I won't say necessarily how many, but not everybody is in this movie. And I wish they were. Now, other than that, I also feel, though, with all the amount of characters that they had, there isn't as much character development for certain characters. I do not necessarily need every one of the Avengers to have character development. I do not need every one of the Guardians of the Galaxy to have character development. What I do need is some of the main Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy characters, or just any of the MCU characters, to have some of the main ones to have a bit more of character development, and we didn't get that with everybody. Now, a lot of people will say, well, it's been a 10-year build-up, we all know where these characters are coming from. I agree, but you still want certain of the main ones to shine a little bit more, because you feel that they've had such a big influence since the beginning that they would still have a bigger part in this film. That's all I'm going to say, but we still did get character development. The most was Thanos. Thanos had the most character development, and you absolutely love where his character's coming from. He's kind of like one of those characters that you hate, that you love to hate. He's kind of like that, but at the same time, you just love him so much, even though he is like the worst thing to happen to the Avengers. Doctor Strange, I felt, had a good character development arc. Thor had a really interesting one as well. And Iron Man. I felt that those ones had the strongest character development points in the film. And I also think MVP, in terms of everybody that was in here on the good guy side, Doctor Strange, man, he's so calm and composed, and he's like, he understands what's going on, he knows how much of a big threat this is and how dire the situations are, and he's still just like, I got this, and this is bad, but I'm gonna stay cool. And he's like, this is what we gotta do, this is what we gotta do, and then he just starts doing crazy stuff everywhere. Awesome. I already loved his character in the Doctor Strange film. That's one of my favorite MCU movies, is the Doctor Strange movie. And Benedict Cumberbatch, he is so right for that role. It's insane. I think anything that the man touches anyway, it turns to gold. But like, him and Doctor Strange just melded so beautifully together that it just shines in this film. Loved that. Some of the team-ups that they have are just pure joy, and some of the conversations that they have are great. The comedy in this film is done at the right times. Because sometimes you're like, you watch a movie and they'll have a big serious moment, and then they kind of throw in a comedy or a punchline or something like that, and you're like, you kind of take away the gravity of the situation. But this, all the pacing for the jokes was done well. You didn't feel that when they were saying a joke that it took away from anything, and then they would have a serious moment, and it was a serious moment. You were back to being, this is a bad thing, this is a threat, this is not good. I really, really like that. The pacing for the overall movie was actually really, really well done. There was maybe just a few instances, and they were so minor that I was like, I'm not going to really knock them for any of the pacing here, because they did such a good job with the amount of characters that they had. And that's another thing too, that even though they didn't have necessarily everybody, and that not every character got a really time to shine, they did such a good job with so many of the characters that, you have to commend them. And it's understandable that they couldn't have everybody in here to have a moment necessarily, like a plot where their character is being the driving force of something. So I kind of understand that. But it makes you want some of the other characters and some of the other characters that are main characters to have something more than what they had. That's what I'll say. But still, they did a phenomenal job, and I know it was a huge undertaking, and they did it right. And that's the biggest thing, is that they did everything in this movie right. And then you get to the end of the movie, and you want more. You want to go back and watch it again. That's exactly how I felt, and I'm going to go back to theaters. I might go back 3 times. I'm not sure. I'm actually rewatching some movies with my mother, because she hasn't seen all the MCU movies, and we're not watching all, 19 of them or something, I think we're at. But I'm specifically looking at ones that she hasn't seen that I think she will need to see to watch this movie to fully appreciate it. I think that if you haven't seen any MCU movie before, you could still like it, but you won't nearly like it as much if you had seen at least some of the main movies. And I might do a video on that of which characters or which movies you'll need to see to fully appreciate this. Because once again, I don't feel you need to watch all of it, but there's a few movies that you will need to see to really appreciate what they've done with this movie. So, I'm going to give this movie a rating, but it is not it's my rating after one watch where I feel that it's not a real rating. It's a rating because I'm just going to give a rating because I've seen the movie once, so I'm going to give you my first impressions, but this movie has a chance of being more than this. I'm a harsh critic. I'm giving the movie an 8 out of 10. But this movie has the potential to being a 9. There's really only a handful of movies that might be better than in the MCU. I've only given one MCU movie a 9. That's it. So, for it to be getting an 8, it's still very high. And I haven't given a movie, excluding superhero movies, I haven't given any movie a 9 since 2013. So, this is the first, or this is one of the few 8s that I've given throughout the years. So, just to give you a perspective on why I'm giving it an 8, has potential to be a 9. Wouldn't say it's a 10, though. That much I'm sure of. But still, phenomenal movie, and even though I gave one movie a higher rating, I would still say that this movie has more rewatchability than any of the other movies in the MCU as of this point. Avengers 4 could top this, which is crazy. So, thank you all for watching. You've been bearded in. Beardage!